Welcome to the Queer Spirit Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Venegoni. Here we have conversations with artists, healers, and activists who enliven the LGBTQ communities and who empower our queer spirits to flourish. My guest today is Bevin Branlandingham of queerfatfemme.com. Bevin is an ultra-rad warrior for self-acceptance. She is a writer, aerobics instructor, healer, and performer in Los Angeles, California, who believes that all bodies are good bodies and makes the world safe for people to love themselves. Today we talk about worthiness, self-love, and the importance of loving our queer bodies. We also talk about the origins and inspirations for her one-of-a-kind healing aerobics class, Fat Kid Dance Party. Join the fun at fatkiddanceparty.com. Welcome, Bevin. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, Nick. It's exciting to be here.
So I wanted to start out by talking a little bit more about your background. And I know that you were a lawyer for a long time and you eventually left law and started Queer Fat Femme. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, I identify as a recovering lawyer. I went to law school. I made the decision to go to law school when I was 20 years old, which is a really tender age to make a $100,000 decision. And I knew by my second year in law school that it wasn't for me. I already felt this dread and panic about getting a job and pursuing law as a career. But I also did not yet know myself enough and was not self-aware or self-possessed enough to make my own independent choices. And I really needed stability and security to feel okay and worthy. So I pursued law, I graduated, and I became a real estate lawyer, which was not my original choice. I wanted to be an immigration lawyer, but there were no jobs and it was really hard to find one. And I just happened to know somebody who worked at a giant mortgage lender who hired lawyers to close their mortgages. And so that's how I got my first real job out of law school. And I worked there for 5 years. In that time, that's actually when I started I had a podcast for a while called Femcast, the Queer Fat Femme Guide to Life. And that was from about 2008 to 2010 is when I did that podcast. And that led to queerfatfemme.com, which is my blog, which has been around for 10 years now. And so all that time I was being a lawyer, I was also using my lawyer lifestyle to fund my art and activism. And I lost my job in 2008 when the mortgage bubble burst. And so as a real estate attorney who relied heavily on mortgage lenders, it was very devastating for our firm. So our firm eventually closed after I was laid off. And I just hung a shingle, which just in lawyer speak, that just means I opened my own practice. And so I was able to work from home, representing clients, and work about 20 hours a month, which isn't a lot as a lawyer, but it was real estate law was pretty much all I could stomach. And I didn't want to try to do something new because I knew it wasn't my passion. So I figured I would go all in on funding my art and activism. I was at the time a queer party promoter in New York. And I threw a monthly party called Rebel Cupcake, which was called by Time Out New York one of the reasons why New York City is the best city in the world. So that was my favorite accolade I got from that. And it was really fun to create these body positive parties that were queer and flamboyant, but it doesn't really pay the bills as many queer community organizers can tell you. I like to say for every one lesbian dollar, it's worth 8 American dollars. But I was having a lot of fun and I was really living my truth and loving my life. And so for those reasons, I kind of just persisted and just let law kind of pay for my life and not have to work a lot. So you can live like a broke artist and work a little bit if you have a pretty well-paying job. And then my partner wanted to move to LA. In 2014, she got breast cancer and she broke up with me and tried to move to LA on her own. And then she got breast cancer and came back to New York for treatment. And we got back together. And, it was our true love story. We loved each other. And this cancer will do a lot of things for you. And it'll really show you what the truth of your life is. And so after she finished her treatment, I refused to move in with her because I was living in a rent stabilized apartment in New York with a roommate I liked. And I was this is a great living situation. So in New York, you really have to weigh a lot of factors.
Yeah.
When you move in with your partner. And so we were doing great, but she really she had it in her heart to move to LA. she took me out for a visit, and I was only here for like half a day. We went to the Northeast section, which is where we ended up moving. And I just fell in love with it. Like, there are wild parrots and there's so much nature so adjacent to a city. And I wasn't done with city living, but I knew New York was kind of grinding me down. Mm-hmm. And it required so much self-care to just exist in New York. And it was also harder to do self-care because going to the gym took it was like a half an hour to get to the gym, like whether it was public transit or walking. And it was like, you couldn't just throw your gym clothes in the trunk because you don't have a car. So you're just like carrying them around everywhere. And then you're going to the grocery store. And it was just like a hassle to just survive. And I think New York is the kind of place where you can thrive if you really want to be there. I knew New York was not a forever place for me. And I'd been there for over a decade. And I was just like, let me be open to something new. And Dara incentivized me to move to LA because I knew I wasn't going to take the bar in California, because I promised myself when I took the bar the first time, it was the only time I was going to take it. If I failed it, I wasn't going to do it again. It was just over. Mm-hmm. And I passed it in 2 states on the first try. So go me. But moving to California, the one time I clicked the California bar website just to see how much it cost, because that was, of course, the most common question from everyone when I moved was, are you going to take the bar? And I got the same dread that I felt in my heart that I had in law school. And I was like, oh, that feeling that I haven't felt in I was in practice for 13 years. So I was like, this is a long time that I haven't felt this terrible feeling, but here it is again. I'm going to listen to it. And so I retired. And luckily, I was able to do it because my partner agreed to support me because I moved to California with her. But it was the best decision I could have made. My grandmother lived in Palm Springs, and she died 1 year to the day after we moved to LA. And getting to spend that last year of her life, where I had always just gotten to see her maybe once a year, to get to see her so many times in that last year, which we didn't know was her last year. Yeah. And so what an irreplaceable gift to have truly just followed my heart and let go of safety nets, and to have landed so solidly in a place I never thought I would live. Mm-hmm.
So moving to California and Los Angeles it wasn't like, I'm going to leave law and I'm going to move to LA and I'm going to start, this whole thing. It was more organic than that.
Yeah, it was so organic. And I thought I was going to start this Reiki infused tea company, which is not started. It's just not continued for now. But I didn't think I was going to become a Reiki master. And then after my grandmother passed, I met this amazing healer who was just the path. And so I decided to go forward with my Reiki because I had level 2 and I got level 1 to help heal my partner during her breast cancer treatment. I got level 2 because I felt the call to put it in tea to create a healing modality that was easier for people to access than getting a healing. And then I got the master for me because it was a calling and it's what the universe wanted. And so I tend to listen because the universe is always right. Mm-hmm.
How did you first get into healing?
I think I've always been a healer and didn't know. So I'll say I think I want to acknowledge that it's always been present. Yeah. But I think coming in, it's almost like a coming out as a healer, because it's it's a marginalized identity. It's not something the mainstream really embraces. Energy healing isn't necessarily something that people are like, oh yeah, I totally understand that. That's totally normal. But it was like a coming out process to myself that this was a gift that I had. And I had a great tarot reading actually with a friend, and she said, I think that you're going to start doing Reiki. And I was like, wait, what? I don't even know what Reiki is. And frankly, I still didn't understand what Reiki was when I went to my first class. But when Sarah was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was kind of desperate. And I was like, well, here's the thing that I was foretold. So let's take this class. And it was amazing. And it's really, I can't recommend Reiki enough to people just as a healing modality, but also even level 1 as just a human in the world. You can do Reiki on yourself and it will improve your life. It's an antidepressant. It reduces stress and anxiety, which is something that I think our toxic world really lands in us a lot, especially as queers and other intersectional marginalizations.
But you don't teach Reiki.
I don't teach Reiki. My Reiki master is really bomb, and I love her, and I love, she team teaches with they're both queers with another queer, and they do amazing work teaching Reiki. And so that's teaching Reiki is not my call, but it's available.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of your bigger projects now is the Fat Kid Dance Party. And I wonder if you can share more about that and how it got started and everything, since it sounds like it wasn't your dream when you first moved to LA.
It totally wasn't. If you told me 3 years ago I was going to move to LA and become an aerobics instructor and a Reiki master, I would have been like, what? But you know what? This is what happens when you open your life up to possibilities and like really follow your joy. When I first got to LA, so I mentioned before going to the gym was like an important part of my self-care. And as a fat person, going to the gym was a huge hurdle for me in my sort of development as a human being and being resilient to judgment. Because fat people, it's so ironic because like they want you to work out because people assume that being fat is because you don't work out, which is not true. You can be fat for many reasons, including benign human diversity. People are just fat and it's okay. But also like it's a side effect of diseases. It's the side effect of medications. It's sometimes lifestyle. Sometimes it's mental health. Like there are so many reasons that are totally benign and none of anybody's business except yourself why people are fat. But still put them in a workout environment and like there's all this judgment and like there's so much culture in gyms around like, especially like with men picking up women, like it's like, I mean, I'm sure it's true like in cruisy hot gay gym situations too, but like I know so many people, myself included, who like don't want to be seen at the gym. I just want to go work out and have my self-care. And so that was like a huge hurdle for me, was like starting a gym practice. And I did that because I had been in a really great yoga practice with a very supportive yoga instructor. And then after that, I took up tennis. And so there's just so many like movement modalities I've just kind of adapted to late in life. And I just believe that today is the best day to start something new. And the more I embrace that, the better my life gets. And when I moved to LA, I didn't find a gym right away that I wanted to go to. And so I started doing dance aerobics because it was something I had loved when I was a kid. And I was like, okay, let me try this thing. And I was going to these dance aerobics classes that were marketed for all levels. And it was wildly false. They were not for all levels. I was like, I am a fairly fit human being. And the fact that like I am struggling, like when you get to the end of the beginning of a class and the instructor's like, that was the warm up. And you're like, wait, what? Like, that's not a warm up for you, because warm ups are actually not one size fits all. Warm ups should wake your body up to movement. You should be like a bird coming out of a nest for the first time and just exploring your body, feeling your body, breathing into your body. It does not need to be like an instantaneous like dance combination. So I think, and that's something that's just like wildly missed by so many people who teach aerobics, is like, how do you connect to people of all levels? And I was in the back of those classes, and I've done enough work on myself that I'm fine being the slowest in the class, but I definitely feel like there are more people that were missed than just me. And I'm like, who else is missing from this? And as I would continue to go to these classes, I was like, I just kept thinking, I was like, well, I used to throw dance parties. Like, what is so different about dance aerobics than a dance party? And so I got my group exercise certification and I dove in and I made what I wanted to see. And so that's Fat Kid Dance Party.
And how long have you been doing that now?
1 year.
1 year.
Going for a year. I mean, there's a lot of things that make Fat Kid Dance Party very special. And I think that the first and primary thing is that it's a healing environment, and it's in the subtitle. So everything about Fat Kid Dance Party and the branding is very retro on purpose, because I am a child of the 80s and 90s and it brings me joy. So Fat Kid Dance Party's subtitle is for all sizes to heal from body oppression. So the idea is that anyone of any size is completely welcome, and everyone of all sizes is affected by body oppression, because when fat bodies are targeted, thin people are afraid of getting fat. And so it's like this way in which like I might, as a fat person, experience more discrimination than a thin person would because of my fatness, but a thin person is still affected by the system that oppresses me. So it's like this feedback loop where it lands in your body. Everyone's oppression, I believe oppression is experienced similar to trauma. And trauma lands in your body. And even as you do the mental work to get it out of your mind, your body is still reacting to what it perceives as threats, and like PTSD just lands in your body. And so one of my main lines of inquiry as a healer is how can we heal from trauma using our bodies?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited because I think Fat Kid Dance Party is part of that healing process, and it very intentionally is. So we do a lot of somatic, that means with the body, exercises in class where we remind our bodies that it's okay and it's safe to take up space, which helps us build confidence and helps us stay resilient to a society that tells us that our bodies and our very being is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I create a safer space as much as I possibly can. I do a lot of work to research psychologically safe environments because I think a lot of people coming into a movement class for the first time or for the first new time have a lot of like scared stuff, fear that's like in the way of them really fully participating. So I do my best to like create an environment that people feel okay trying new movement and showing up. So I have some rules. The first rule is there's no wrong way to do Fat Kid Dance Party. If you show up and you're moving, you're doing it right. I also allow people, I give variations for movements, and I say variations very intentionally instead of modifications, which some other movement practitioners use that word. I like variations because I don't think there's a right way to do it, and I don't think there's a right fitness level. So if you need a variation to make it harder, that's great. I have those. And if you need a variation to make it easier, I have those as well. And I also encourage people to use a chair for any or all of the workout because working out in a chair is no joke. Like it's actually a lot of work on your arms. It hurts a lot at the end. So I think it's like totally relevant, especially people who have like knee issues or who like aren't up for like a full workout in that way. Totally valid and fine. The second rule is we cheer for awkward. So if anybody feels awkward at any moment, they can holler out, "I feel awkward," and everyone will cheer for them. And this is like a life skill I want to give people is like the ability to be awkward, right? Like life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Like you deserve to live your full life. And the more comfortable you can get with being uncomfortable, the better your life will be. The third rule is if you want to sing along, go ahead. And if you can't sing, sing loud. Part of Fat Kid Dance Party is a sing along. And so it was really important to me when we were doing the workout video that I get some music that we could sing along to. Like, plus also getting into your voice is getting into your joy. And that's like what Fat Kid Dance Party is all about. It's like, I don't measure weight loss as a metric of success. I measure joy. And if I see my students leaving with big smiles on their faces, I know I did it. And the fourth rule, and there's plenty of rules because I'm a lesbian and that's how we live our best lives. The fourth rule is that we high five for self-care. And that's like if you get a drink of water, you get a high five. If you're feeling the moves, you get a high five. Everyone gets a high five just for showing up because showing up is the hardest part of working out. And I just really believe in creating connections for people. And as someone who is only a situational extrovert, like I can get really awkward in a place where I only know nobody. And, or even if I only know one person, but having the permission to high five and connect with people in that way is like a doorway for me. So I just give that to my students to have a way to connect. And I believe this is like a way that can help people heal through also creating community. And like, I really see this as like people connecting over having experienced the class, even if they've never been in class together, even if they are doing it. Someone did it at my Austin tour stop and someone did it in Minneapolis. If they see each other in Fat Kid Dance Party shirts in like an airport in Ohio, I want them to high five for self-care.
Yeah, I love all that. I really like how positive and exuberant you are and that you bring that joy to the class and the way that you have done your research to include everyone. And one of the things I was thinking about is, you know, when I was a kid, I was chubby and I got teased a little bit and felt awkward in my body. And then as I got older and was less chubby, then realizing that I was gay and then felt awkward in my body because of that. And I wonder if you talk about, you know, in your classes at all, like having, you know, if people are maybe not fat right now, but have an inner fat kid or something like that, or the way that you make it more inclusive to people with queer bodies and non-binary bodies. Because I can imagine that people like that going to a gym may feel uncomfortable just because they're uncomfortable in their body, not because of their weight, but because of something else.
Well, I think there's two things I do with this. Number one is I kind of believe in the universality of experience. So I kind of trust that people can see themselves in the things that I say, but also everything. I identify as a body liberation activist. And I use that term very specifically because I think all bodies deserve liberation. And it's like liberation from this idea of body currency, which is a term coined by Jess Baker of the Militant Baker. And body currency is this idea that different bodies have different value based on these arbitrary differences. So like gender, race, class, sexuality, size, ability, religion, culture, all of those things create these like metrics of value, and we can choose to liberate ourselves from that idea of body currency. So I think everything I do is so relatable to everybody, because even if I'm talking about fat people, like that's extracted to do other things. And I also explicitly call out when I'm modeling like those confidence exercises where we're unlearning oppression, I specifically call out all of those different various oppressions, because basically as people who have that experience, we're taught that we're not allowed to take up space. And so, and I do a lot of like subtle things, especially around non-binary stuff, because I feel like gender, I came of age as a drag king performer. So I'm a very high femme presenting person. Like I'm like, my gender is really more like Miss Piggy and Dolly Parton. And like, so you would not expect me to have a drag experience, but yet this is how I came to be.
No, I can see it.
So I did this like drag king life when I was in law school, actually. Like that's when I started in my drag troupe. And I learned so much about gender and how to be a gender warrior. And like, it's just such like an important part in my heart. So it's like very included. And so there's only 2 people right now who are working towards becoming certified instructors of Fat Kid Dance Party. I'm working on like a program, but that's like, you know, all these things, all these projects, and there's only one of me.
Yeah.
So this is also why the T is on the shelf, because I just got to get Fat Kid Dance Party rolling. So, but one of them is non-binary, and that's really important to me. It's really important to me to show that there's just like, gender is nothing that you assume, and that there's just so much available there. So I feel like, and also in the workout video at the end, if anybody out there has ever seen a Richard Simmons tape, at the end of all of his tapes, like he has these amazing diverse casts of different size bodies. And then at the end, they do like a kind of like credits walk, and he always has them put up their name and how much weight they've lost, which is such a bummer, because it's like, oh, are you only a valuable fat dancer if you are losing weight? Are you only valuable as a fat person if you are at least attempting to conform to society's beauty standards? Like, it is always like such a crushing moment for me. Even still, like, I know I expect it, and like it still always disappoints me. And so for my diva walk in my video, which is what I called it the diva walk, I'm putting up everyone's pronouns, because like they're not what you expect. And like I intentionally cast non-binary people, and like I intentionally like want people to think through, you can't default pronouns. And so it's just like, obviously fat comes first because it's in the title, but like I think there's just like a lot of oppression that we can unpack by just doing the work.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so much that we hold in our body and the way that other people in our culture see our body and value us based on our body and what they see, and not just about our size and not just about our gender, but, you know, everything else, what we're wearing, etc. So I'm glad you brought Richard Simmons up, because I was going to ask you if there was any influence there, especially when you talked about how retro it was. I mean, even though what I remember about his videos was he did a lot of like retro, which was retro in the 80s, which was the 60s and 70s, like Sweatin' to the Oldies and Sweatin' to Disco and stuff like that. So,
yeah. I mean, Richard Simmons is a huge influence. He's like, let's talk about using music in your videos. He is OG using all the good music. Like every single thing is something you could really sing along to. My favorite of all of them is Party Off the Pounds. Like solid soundtrack, not just like oldies from like the 50s and 60s, but that was like oldies from the 80s too. I think that one is from the 90s. But Richard Simmons is amazing. Yeah. I feel like he really pioneered movement for all bodies. And what is just sad is that like the movement for all bodies was really like tied into weight loss. And like he definitely he himself had a very radical weight loss where he lost weight very fast in a super unhealthy way. And so like that's the person that's leading the charge. And I feel like there's probably some like, you know, like I'm a fat person leading aerobics, but I'm not trying to get anyone to lose weight. I'm trying to get people to move. And like, give them a container for self-care. Like, I don't care if people are like, oh, you're not qualified to be an aerobics instructor because you're fat. Because like, I have a group exercise certification. So you go ahead and take that test and tell me how you feel about it. It was not an easy test. And like, I think there's just movement available for everybody. And it's like, who's not being served in mainstream fitness? Like, the people who I'm serving are not being served by mainstream fitness.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just like therapists and coaches I know who have been married and divorced multiple times, yet they still specialize in working with couples and relationships. And they're, doesn't mean that they're not good at their job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I wonder if you can share with us a person, practice, or experience that has supported your queer spirit to flourish.
Oh, that's a good one. I think that truly it's the experience, and it's not even just one experience, but it's like the regular intentional setting where I go to places where I'm in a sort of village environment. And it's like, and it can be anything. Like, I started going to like drag king conferences when I was performing drag king in the early 2000s. And that was like a really thriving community for a while. And it was just amazing to be around all these gender warriors from all over the world who are performing and who all share that same love for performing. I went to fat and queer conferences, which was like also liberating, just to like meet other people and learn from them how they were extracting themselves from this mainstream beauty ideal and living and thriving in that way. Going to places where even now I have this like coaching program that I'm in where we just like go on retreats and we learn together. We dig up our stuff and we like stand on the edge of our resistance, and we have support to like step in it anyway. And going to like festivals where it's specifically for queer people or for women or for like fat people or whatever. I just like creating village atmospheres where people are centering or creating or going to, where just people are centering connections. The first Fat Kid Dance Party tour stop was in Seattle at an event called Curves and Bloom. And it was just a one-day event. It was just about thriving and being fat. And they had vendors and workshops, and we did Fat Kid Dance Party in the morning, and we did a great panel discussion at night. And it's just so affirming to be around people who look like you and believe that you're valuable, when I think a lot of people don't have that. And I just suggest, I mean, this has helped me a lot as a queer person, and it's why Queer Fat Femme is my name online, because meeting other queer fat femmes liberated me. It gave me permission to be myself. And so anytime you can be in a place, like I'm going to start doing Fat Kid Dance Party retreats, because like I just want to bring this community together, introduce people, and like let's grow into our greatness and have fun and work out and like hang out. And I just feel like just hanging out and being in community and showing up for that can change everything for you, because we don't live in a society where like, it's just weird when you're a super minority at a lot of intersections and you're walking around and you don't see people who look like you that much. I mean, I think my life is a little different because in LA, I've like worked hard to be in like a little fat, like clubhouse community, but I need it. I need it to thrive. So, if you don't have that, go to a place like that, go to retreats and getaways and camping trips or create it, like create the space, because like that nurtures me in a way, like fills up a well that I didn't even know was empty by the time I'm leaving, and I'm like ready to take on the world and ready to be resilient again. And I really, truly, my mom has retired to a little lesbian village on the Olympic Peninsula. My dream is to be able to like buy a plot of land nearby and like create my own little village to retire in, because that's the environment I really want to live in, is like where, like my cup of sugar comes from like a dear friend who lives 3 houses down. You know what I mean? Like,
Awesome. I love that. Well, Bevin, thank you so much for being here. It's been really a joy talking to you and hearing more about all the work that you're doing in the world and supporting all these different communities. Can you let people know how they can find you and hear more about your work?
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me, Nick. This is such a great opportunity. I love queer healers and talking about queer healing and all of the things. So thank you so much. People can find me. FatKidDanceParty.com is where the party starts. And sign up on my email list. You'll get missives from me once a week that just kind of talk about, I feel like every day I learn something new about my self-love journey. And so I talk once a week about what's going on for me in those emails and tell you what's new for Fat Kid Dance Party or like other healing opportunities I have. I'm also on Facebook Live every day talking about my experience with self-love, because I kind of realized that like, I examine my life every day, because self-love is a practice, because you don't just like decide to be self-loving and poof, suddenly you're self-loving. You just actually have to work for it. So I talk about it every day, and it's great. And so it's a great touchstone. So you can follow me on Facebook at Queer Fat Femme and turn on notifications to find out when I go live. I'm also on Instagram at Queer Fat Femme and also at Fat Kid Dance Party. So those are kind of the main venues where you'll find me actively sharing queer healing, basically. It's kind of my jam.
Great. And we'll have all of those on the show notes. And when does the workout video come out?
That is a great question. Probably by the time this podcast comes out or really near to when this podcast comes out. We just wrapped filming a week ago, less than a week ago. So I'll find out by next week what our potential launch date is, but it's definitely this summer.
Awesome.
And People Can Pre-Sale is still on right now. So check to see. If you go to fatkiddanceparty.com, the update will be there.
Great. Well, thanks again.
Thanks so much, Nick.
Thanks for listening to the Queer Spirit Podcast. To find out more about all the resources we discussed today, find the show notes at thequeerspirit.com. You can also continue the conversation by joining the Queer Spirit Community Facebook group. Simply search Queer Spirit Community on Facebook. See you next time.